everybody. Good morning, good morning. All right, thank you so much for coming out on, it's going to be a very hot, steamy day. So first and foremost, take care of yourselves today. It's going to be very, very hot today and tomorrow both. So thanks for coming out and joining us. I'm Jamie Toledo with the Cedar Rapids Metro Economic Alliance. And we love doing this with Hiawatha, with HEDCO. We've been doing this now for years. And the business community that you have here is very tight, very friendly, very welcoming. And so it's always a pleasure for us to come and partner with HEDCO on these events. So today we're going to be talking about nearshoring, reshoring, offshoring, everything shoring, kind of getting a litmus test on where are we now since 2020. So we have Andrea Smith from IEDA, who's a fantastic resource for all things international, exporting, importing, reshoring, nearshoring. Brent Cobb, thank you so much from World Class Industries hosting us today. And then Jeremy Wild from New Leader. So just a little bit about where are we. We've broken a record apparently in 22 with 1,800 companies actually now having taken the leap to reshoring. We'll go through some definitions with Andrea first on what all that means. Reshoring, nearshoring, all of that. But this means in 23-24, a creation of 400,000 jobs here in the United States. So where is it coming from? Electronics, we know this, chips, EV batteries, that sort of thing. Chemicals, consumer products, medical equipment. So we're going to start again with all of this, with the definitions, but before I do, I'm supposed to mention the HEDCO, State of the City for Hiawatha is going to be on September 14th from 4 to 5:30 p.m., and that's at Ogden Adams. So make sure you try to get there. And with that, I will open it up to Andrea to start the show.
Thank you. And I might stand up just because I feel more comfortable. Thanks for the introduction. And I'm shocked at what a huge group we have here, especially with the heat, but I guess it's not too bad yet. Just a little bit about myself before I get started. So my name's Andrea Smith, and I work in the International Trade Office for the state of Iowa. We're based out of Des Moines under the Economic Development Authority. I've been there about 6 years. Before that, I worked in commercial satellite imagery, and I did international business development and marketing. So I've traveled to over 60 countries and always kind of been on the sales side and the business development and marketing side. And I know today we're talking about supply chain and that kind of thing, bringing supplies in and reshoring those. But I just wanted to mention that just as a resource. I know one of the things, when you walk away from something like today and you have more questions or you need more information, like I said, we are a state agency, but we work, the Department of Commerce has an office in Des Moines. We work with lots of different international trade agencies throughout the state and nationally. So if you do have a question, you walk out of here today, you have a question about the reshoring, about trade, give me a call, and I might not be able to answer it, but we like to kind of be a one-stop shop for resources. And that's the only reason I mentioned, my background and where I come from. And as I mentioned, we are focused on trade. So, we're talking today about reshoring, which is bringing jobs back, bringing things back to America and back to the U.S., which is, very important as well. And it all ties together for a lot of different companies. And I was going to just, as we start the discussion, just define a few things. Reshoring is kind of a common word maybe, but it is, it's the opposite of offshoring. I think companies always are looking at certain things. They want to reduce risk. They want to reduce cost, increase profit. I mean, these are just cornerstones of businesses. Oh, I hope you guys can hear me. So why would they offshore in the first place? To do all of those things. There was a time when to move operations overseas for a lot of different reasons was cost effective. It saved money. It made things faster. It was cheaper, easier, quicker to do things overseas. And as we all know, coming through COVID and coming through the current times, and I'm going to skip ahead just a little bit, to talk about how we did get here where people are reshoring and they are bringing operations back. I think a lot of people think, it was COVID. There's been a lot going on in recent years. It's not just COVID. I think, should know, 5 years ago, we had the steel tariffs. I mean, that was extremely disruptive to so many companies, and it caused panic. We have had a global pandemic, obviously. There's been a lot of geopolitical events, both here in the United States and abroad. There's been changes in demand. Some of that did come from COVID. I mean, when COVID hit, we went from, I think I've seen presentations where it was 70% service, 30% product industry, and we flipped that. All of a sudden, everybody's going to Home Depot every weekend to remodel their bathroom. We had labor shortages, natural resource limits. China had the lockdown, again, related to COVID, but there was just so many things. You look at the rail or the trucking industry, lack of truck drivers. This wasn't just COVID and we're coming out of COVID. I mean, there's been so many things that have led to this. And again, why are people doing this? To decrease the uncertainty, to decrease the cost, to bring that back to some control. Putting it very simply, I look at Amazon. There's a lot of men in here, maybe the women can relate, but I got used to, if you ordered something on Amazon, you knew it was going to be here in 2 days. And I live in a farm north of Cedar Rapids. I mean, it was going to get to my house in 2 days. Rare occasion it didn't. Even if it was before Christmas, even if it was before a holiday, maybe a snowstorm would stop it. But you got used to that. I wouldn't dare go on Amazon today and expect to get something in 2 days. You might, but not, and it's getting better. But we got used to just things working, and then we had all this disruption, and we had to adapt. And again, there's risk, there's cost, and everyone's always going to look to how to minimize those things. I also wanted to talk just a second, because I am in international trade. We are seeing people reshore, which is bringing operations back to the U.S. What we're helping a lot of companies with is nearshoring. And very similar, but again, to reduce costs, risk, and time, they're bringing it closer to home. And we're going to hear some great direct examples from these two gentlemen, but I work with a lot of companies, so I have secondhand stories where they were getting things from Asia and they just can't count on that anymore, and it completely disrupted their operations. So they're looking for foundries in Mexico or companies in Canada or things closer to home, even Latin America, where something doesn't have to get on a ship. It can be trucked or put on a train. We're in the same time zone. The costs, maybe there's still a cost efficiency because, again, companies are only going to do this if it works for them and it's a benefit for them. And again, to take away that fear, I think that was a big thing in supply chain for a lot of people, was just the fear and the unknown, because something that had worked forever just wasn't working like it used to, and I think that was huge. And just also, I wanted to talk too a little bit that to make sure everybody's aware. We used to have NAFTA. In July of 2020, they ratified the USMCA, which is the United States, Mexico, Canada Free Trade Agreement. And we work with a lot of companies who are curious in using this when they're shipping to Canada, shipping to Mexico. There's a lot of, when things come in from a different country, you ship something out, there's tariffs, there's taxes, there's customs duties. And under the USMCA, there is a lot of clauses and things that can get goods brought in and out of the country if you're shipping within North America at no duty, no taxes. And this is something that makes maybe your product more attractive. If you're competing with a European company and you're trying to export something to Mexico or to Canada, if you can utilize the USMCA agreement, or if you're trying to bring parts and pieces up from Mexico or, near shore some of that raw material, this is something that, you should consider. We help a lot of companies kind of navigate this. There's minimal paperwork to fill out. Well, paperwork's always paperwork, right? But that's something that too, people are looking. This is more than nearshoring, where if it's possible they were getting things from Asia, Europe, or somewhere else in the past. They're looking to North America to, again, cut down those costs and reduce the risk. And that's just, I put in there the resources. Like I said, we work with all these different organizations throughout Iowa and even nationally that have resources. But I think I'm going to hand it over to these guys and kind of let them, give their story as well and a few opening comments.
Well, I don't know. I'm not that well prepared. I did not bring my PowerPoint presentation this morning, but I will. We did get a nice cheat sheet, so maybe Jeremy and I can start with this first one of just where did the supply chain landscape, what did that look like before all of this kind of started to happen, maybe is a good place to start. And I think kind of building off what Andrea said, I think cost was always a very important dimension, kind of reshoring, and what we've started to see is that that's an important dimension, but it's now getting counterbalanced with a lot of other dimensions in terms of geopolitical risks, transportation, some of those other factors. And so I think it's not for us it's not a turn the page black or white kind of situation. It's more of a kind of a rebalancing of the different dimensions in the sourcing decision. I don't know. What are you seeing, Jeremy, at New Leader?
Thanks, Brent. No, I agree. I think before COVID and the world went into what I would guess I'd call current state, is that it was kind of just normal course of business. We tried to align ourselves with vendors and suppliers that would have great quality, great delivery, good cost, things of that nature. And it was just a little bit more, I guess, structured and standard as you went through your life. It feels like everything since COVID has been, we're triaging every day. We're looking at, vendors that are firing you in some cases because they can't keep up with demand of their other customers, vendors that are treating you very well because you had a really 50-year-long relationship with them. We can talk about that a little bit more. And then just the opportunities to, we started to look at more of a global footprint. We expanded into Brazil right after COVID and opened a manufacturing facility there. And at the same time, we're trying to bring everything back to our facility to really get to what Andrea said was control. It's like, how can we have the most control? How can we be the most vertically integrated in our facility so that we could be kind of the masters of our own destiny? We didn't want to be beholden to other vendors that might not be able to supply. And, for example, we went out and bought a CNC tube bender for hydraulic tube bending, and we insourced all of that into our facility so that we could go ahead and take care of that. And it wasn't necessarily about cost. There was certainly a good ROI there, but it was really about us having the inventory on hand when we needed it so that we didn't slow down and cut our customers off. And as we entered into the new environment, I guess that was always our take, is on-time delivery is paramount. We weren't going to be the ones that shut down a John Deere or an AGCO or a Case. We were going to be the ones that had our stuff there, and they were the ones that were waiting, and then we had to store their stuff for them, and we were ready for it. So we did a lot of things preemptively to make sure that we always had our stuff on hand so that we wouldn't be the roadblock to them shipping their units. What's the next question, Brent?
What disrupted the flow of things?
The flow of things. I think for us it was just people. People not being at our vendors to do the work. There was cases where our vendor would call us and say, "Hey, sorry, I know we make 50,000 of these for a year, but we have to pick and choose, so you guys aren't going to get it." And then we would have to resource it somewhere else, and it might necessarily be coming from off seas or anything like that. But what it really it did was it let us start to work with our current vendors that were really loyal and were always going to be there for us. I think the other thing from a flow standpoint is just people in our facility trying to meet the production needs of what our customers demanded. Ever since the end of 2020, it's been go, 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 go. I mean, we're working overtime. We're trying to bring in great quality, skilled tradespeople, and that's always been a frustration for us, is getting trades programs into the schools so that we've got a good group of people coming in as people are retiring out. So there's a lot of things that were going on that we were able to pivot and do some different things. But I think people and just some surprises every once in a while that really became disruptive.
Yeah, I'll just build off that. I mean, I think, we had a little list here of, steel tariffs, COVID, political events. I would say kind of all of the above. I think it felt, 2 or 3 years ago that every week, every day, there was something new or different that was happening, whether it was a supplier getting shut down, because of COVID things. I didn't realize this was going on, but apparently the Panama Canal is closed because of water levels. It made me think back to the ship that got stuck in the Suez Canal, kind of sideways. It was just one thing after another. We had been in this state where logistics and lead times was more of something you'd loaded in your system, and there was problems that came up, but more or less things happened, or things happened as you planned them to. And then all of a sudden we've gone through this 2 or 3 year period where it hasn't happened how you planned it or how you thought it was gonna happen. And it was just situation after situation after situation. And I think just the sheer number of those different events really caused everybody to start examining things. So I don't know that it was any one event. I think it was more like death by 1,000 paper cuts. It was like, okay, what is happening this week or this month that's making those longer lead time or those more complicated supply chains problematic for us? I don't know if is that something that resonates with you guys? Yeah.
I was just going to say pretty much the same thing. It's just with this, it was the perfect storm. I mean, you said, the culmination of 1,000 cuts, it's like, it really was the perfect storm. When COVID hit, everyone's got their COVID story, right? Where they were when this happened and where they were. My husband and I were actually in Hong Kong in January of 2020. We were on vacation and we were coming, things were really hitting there. And we were Saturday night, it was Chinese New Year. There was nobody there. They were having riots because of political issues in China and Hong Kong and Taiwan, and COVID was starting to hit. And I remember we were just like, "What's going on here?" I mean, the streets were dead. There was nothing. It was just crazy. It was really. And then we got back, and nothing had really happened here yet. But it truly was. I had that list of all the different things that just created all of the. I'll keep saying it's like. It's human behavior, and it's that risk and that even the mindset of everybody kind of migrating the same way. I mean, we all went to Home Depot, we all went and bought goods, we all started remodeling our house. I mean, it was just, you can just, when you look back on it, our children will be learning about this in school about how this all happened, and it was just so many different factors that created all this uncertainty and risk and things that companies were left scrambling to deal with. And I did want to make a comment. Earlier we were talking about, you were commenting about just how we had to pivot during COVID. Another thing that really doesn't have anything to do with reshoring that I think is very important that we've seen companies do is, yes, a lot of jobs are, everybody here probably is in the past few years had trouble hiring people or, labor. We want to bring all these jobs. For anyone who's economic developer, that's our job, to bring jobs. And then you have companies that are like, bring me people too. Bring the jobs and also bring the people. And we're also seeing a lot of companies, I think we've all experienced it. There's been this huge leap in technology. And I don't care what industry it is, but you've got to do things smarter and better. And, even up where I live, I know someone that owns a locker, a meat locker. He can't find people. So he's invested in technology. So something that used to take a meat cutter a whole day, he went out and invested $250,000 to buy a machine that can do all that work in half an hour. It is, and you would say, oh, that's taking away jobs. But it's, we have to adapt, and we have to, you still want to get your meat and you still want those products. And I think in the last 3 years, I just don't know in my lifetime where we'll see this cosmic shift in the world. The work from home and they launched Teams at my company, at the state in December of 2019. And I'm a little old, so I was like, I don't want to learn that. I knew it very well by March of 2020. I was like, oh, they're not joking. Like, we have to learn this because I'm, stuck on my farm in Winthrop. So, I think too, just even though it's not reshoring, I think the technology changes that people, it just fits into that looking to do things more efficiently, cost effective. It's not just with reshoring and nearshoring, it's also in the technology to do things smarter and better and quicker, I think.
Good. Well, our next thought here is just best practices around reshoring, nearshoring, and so I think one thing I can share there is I think it's similar to what Jeremy has said. I think the best practice is that it's an incremental process. I don't think it's ever a thing where you just say, oh, all of a sudden we're gonna take all of our sources and we're gonna relocate it. It's in the world that we live in. I think it's similar to where Jeremy is that a lot of things get tooled and you're locked into a product life cycle, and so wanting to go and buy a bunch more foundry molds and retool everything is not not typically something that we can justify, but it's more of, you're talking about, Jeremy was talking about the tube bender that they brought in house. It's more of the scratch where it itches kind of approach of, okay, what is the top of the list? What is that supplier that's causing us the most issue? How do we work our way through that one and do that smartly? And then, who's next on deck? And so, as one of the things that I think that is important in this topic, you read a lot about it, and it sounds like, oh, it's gonna. This is what everybody's doing, and everybody has this picture that it's all going to happen, today, tomorrow, or certainly this year. And my advice or thought would be, I think, be patient with this. This is going to be a long, 5-10 year process of moving things that don't make sense in far-flung places to places that are closer to suppliers that are more responsive and more capable. But it's not quite the event that everybody kind of starts to think about. So I don't know if that. Yes.
Yes, that is very true, and that is the way to do it. There are people, companies that. I'm not a planner, but we've had companies come to us, and yes, they would have loved to do that, but they don't have supply today, and or their supplier doesn't have the natural resources. They're no longer making that part. They don't. So I mean, that you definitely should plan ahead, and this isn't something that you can just rip operations out of a country and move them back to the U.S. overnight. But necessity. What I don't know the phrase. Necessity is the mother of invention, or the other way around, or whatever it is. But we do see a lot of companies that they're reshoring because they have to, and they don't, what they've relied on for the last 10 years, and I guess you're talking about operations where they actually have an office there and they have things there. I'm, for this example, talking, where they're getting supplies overseas, or they're, working with vendors or contractors, where those have just disappeared, and they do have to do it quickly. And that's never nobody wants to make quick decisions and struggle and not have supply. But sometimes it is just kind of forced upon you, and you have to do it quickly.
Any other best practices at New Leader?
I was just going to add to that from a standpoint. I think the political landscape and what we're trying to bring back on shore is sometimes difficult just because we don't have the capabilities here in the U.S. You talked about electronics, and we went. Short story is we were notified by our vendor that the component that goes into some of our harnesses, which normally costs maybe a few $100s, was now going to have a surcharge of $1,500 to $2,000 per component coming back to us. And so here we are faced with this dilemma. We can't get it in the U.S. It's coming from a different country. And how do we take care of that? And because we're having to buy them all in the secondary market, because I think COVID probably shut down the main market. And what we had to do then was work with our customers to say, we're going to pass this on through to you as much as we can. We're not going to mark it up. We're not going to put margin on it, but we need you to be a partner in this. And we had to work through that dilemma with our customers. And the story ended in a positive way because we were able to negotiate and get some of it in at less cost. And then we actually wrote our customers back a check and said, thank you for being with us on this. We're going to be true to our word. We're not going to mark this up and take any profit on it. This is what it cost us, and this is what you signed up for. And so it bonded us, I think, as customer or partner relationships. But I mean, boy, you get that call and you're like, all of a sudden something costs that much more, and on a unit, for us, on a unit may cost $60,000 or $70,000, all of a sudden calling a customer and saying, there might be a $5,000 upcharge for a component that, you don't really have any, it's not your responsibility to go find this, it's ours. And so we were able to work through that. But I think that's the bigger dilemma for, some of those things we just can't get here. And then you start to hear the economic, China and deflation, and then the steel that was going crazy. I mean, that was one of the other problems we ran into. Is I think it was in 21, some billionaire tycoon decided to short the nickel market, and we buy a lot of 304 stainless steel. And so all of a sudden, I literally could have taken sheet steel off my floor and thrown it in the scrap bin and made money because steel had gone up so much. And so then again, we're going to our customers, having that conversation, saying, here's where we're at. You guys know what's going on. I mean, you guys manufacture things as well, and having that conversation. And steel still hasn't come down to where it was 3 or 4 years ago, and so we're still battling that as well. And then now you've got the U.S. Steel buyout stuff that's going on, and who knows how that's going to impact prices. But I think a lot of it's interesting how much the global political landscape impacts us just here in the corridor. It's kind of amazing.
Anything else from a best practice standpoint?
I don't think anything from the best practice. Next question is, where do you see this going in the future, Brent?
Yeah, the crystal ball, that's always the tough thing. So I think one of the things that we're seeing starting to evolve is there's consulting groups and other groups that are getting into this space. I don't know if you've started to see this, but we've started to get invited to supplier conferences, and there's a lot of household names that maybe their whole supply chain was offshore. They've engaged in work with some sort of consulting group that's looking to start to redesign their supply chain, and some of those companies have had went so far to the extreme of they really have no relationships in the United States, and so they're almost having a kind of a start from scratch experience. And so I think what we would see is maybe a continuation of that of maybe where you start with one piece at a time, and then now we're seeing companies as they kind of mature in that are maybe working more on a strategy. And so I think Andrea mentioned some of the technology pieces. I certainly think that's a piece that plays into the future. Andrea hit a little bit on labor growth. James and I heard a speaker last week that had some really depressing statistics on the labor growth in the last year, and I think forecasted for the next 2 or 3 is the lowest since the Civil War, I believe, was the statistic, which is hard to believe that that can be true, but I think that is the case. And so I would see lots of factors kind of starting to come in as we go forward of where this comes. So lots of different pieces kind of play into the future in my estimation. So.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we've learned last couple of years that nobody has a crystal ball, so who knows? But I think you're definitely seeing things normalize, even in the shipping. Just a few years, if you could see on the news, there were container loads sitting on the east and west coast because they didn't have labor there to unload them. I mean, goods were just sitting there. I mean, that has alleviated itself. I mean, there are containers, things are moving, which is a big part of it. And we have seen things normalize, and people have been resourceful. They've added technology, they've found new vendors, they've done reshoring. And I think, it will always depend. I mean, labor, we touched on it several times today. I mean, that's been a huge part of this, whether it's labor in the U.S. or, when China locked down, you lost all that labor. You can bring all these jobs back to the U.S., but we have to have people to do them. And, we were chatting just beforehand, too, with the about, what we hear every day is, student loan debt and what the young people are doing. I think we do have to have more people go into manufacturing and learn skills and learn trades. I was commenting, I actually have a nephew that works at New Leader, and he went into welding. He went to West Delaware School. They have an excellent welding program, and that sparked an interest. I mean, had the school not had that program, he wouldn't have even he'd never seen it. I mean, why would he know anything about welding? But that he loved it, and now he went to school for that, and he's made a career of it. And I think those are things too. We could talk about the shipping and all these things, these issues, but there's just so many pieces that make this, work. And one, if we are going to reshore and bring jobs back to the U.S., we need to focus on the labor and getting, skilled laborers in trades where they can learn these skills, have great jobs. And, the days of when I went to college 30 years ago, I mean, I graduated and didn't know what I was going to do, but I graduated, I think those days maybe are gone. Where kids are putting a little more thought into careers, and we need to make sure that through internships, even at our agency, Economic Development, we're based out of Des Moines, huge insurance capital. We have a program that just concluded where I can't remember, it was over 100 kids that they had an internship program for to get interested in insurance and careers in that industry. So I think that's something too for all of you, in various industries to think of. It's a lot of planning and a lot of long, looking down the road, but to make sure that, if you want people to be interested in your industry, to help contribute to that, to generate that interest, because there, you all know if there's jobs but no people, it's not going to work. But
I don't know, Jeremy, did we get your predictions for the future?
Yeah, well, first of all, I'll say Evan is an awesome welder, and he is one of my favorite people. He also coaches Benton Wrestling, and we're big wrestling fans. So, but no, I think for us, for New Leader, it's really learning how to be a global company. It's now we have this presence in Brazil. We've been there for 2 years. We have 30 employees down there. If you heard me talk at one of the other events, we are now bringing welders from Brazil to the U.S. We have 3 right now that are working on our floor alongside our other welders. And when we set up Brazil, we made the right decision in giving them the same equipment down there as we have here. So there's this continuity piece that they can come in and just walk right into the building, and they're like brothers out there. I mean, they just love one another. I mean, I've seen welders tear up when the Brazil welders go home. I mean, it's a very cool dynamic out on our production floor. But it's those things of how do we make sure that the trades programs and what we have people come to our facility feel like when they're there that they've got to be players. They got to, they can't just be a person that just does a weld over and over and over again. I mean, the days of monotony and the old style manufacturing, I think, are a thing of the past. And so how can we be different so that it's an exciting career and it's something that they look forward to and they can see doing for quite a few years. I mean, and the truth is, I mean, the Evans of the world, and we've had other people that have come out just out of high school, their peers that went to college, these guys are going to be, as long as they save their money, be far in advance. I mean, sometimes they show up in a new pickup truck too. But they're going to be ahead. They're going to have a head start, and they're making good money for maybe more than what their counterparts who come out of college doing. And so that's a really cool story to tell and to get people into our facility. And we've started bringing middle schoolers in just to give them exposure to what we've got going on. And, we got to make sure we have a good, clean environment. We got a good culture. We got, we do profit sharing and things like that to make them feel part of the organization. And how can we continue to do that so that it becomes something that people want to come to versus have to. And so we're trying our best to do those type of things. And then how do we support our Brazil counterparts? And we do a lot of proprietary work up here and ship it down there. And I will say we were very surprised at how long it takes to get a container, load it up, and then ship it off to Brazil. Our first problems down there was just trying to get inventory down into Brazil, and so we've gotten better at it to the point now we've got too much inventory in Brazil. But things are starting to balance out, and I think as we come out of this, and I think the other thing that in the future that we'll have to contend with is we deal a lot in the ag business, so there'll be these cycles of when things start to soften. And I think we'll start seeing that next year. And then how do we pivot and make sure that the company is starting to still do the things it needs to do to grow out from that too, so that we're not slowing down just to slow down. And so we've got a lot of stuff on the on the plate. We've got new products and things like that we just constantly keep inventing ourselves. I think is a big thing for us. All right. Local resources for people who are interested in learning more.
There's a slide, Andrea, you had up that had. I was gonna hit on one of them. So I was gonna hit on Cirrus, and I don't know if you guys. So one of the I think every state in the United States has what's called a manufacturing extension partnership. The one in Iowa is Cirrus. They've been great partners for us, and so whether it's looking at automation, whether it's looking at sourcing opportunities, one of the places that we always start is with Cirrus, and so we've had a long-standing relationship with them. We continue to leverage it. So whether it's this topic specifically or more broadly, that'd be one of the places that I'd start. They're very a couple people in Lynn County, and then they have the statewide network that specialists kind of throughout that get leveraged, and then they do an excellent job leveraging all the other MEPs in the U.S. There's several different networks, and these MEPs specialize in different things, and so in terms of like one takeaway for somebody to partner with, that would be Cirrus is always high on my list. So maybe I'll let Jeremy, and then you can.
No, Cirrus, I would agree. We just actually engaged them to come out and do a couple days of training, and it was interesting because we were looking to get some resources of how to better lay out our facility flow-wise for some new products that we've got coming through in the next year or two, and so it makes sense now, but I didn't realize it when they came. Is that the person that came in, we went through a lot of training around 5S and some different manufacturing best practices and flow type of things, and really it was geared to teaching our people how to make decisions and to take what we already know and help ourselves, versus them coming in and saying, you guys need to move that and move this and take care of that. So I felt like we came out of that 2-day conference with our manufacturing engineers and some of our operations folks stronger and more equipped to make some better decisions. So I would echo that. Cirrus has been a great partner. And I don't know, are they out of Iowa State? Yes. Yeah, so I mean, they're really good then, because I went to Iowa State. And so they got that going for them.
So yes, 3 votes for Cirrus. They are excellent. We work with them a lot on the international side, but yes, I'm glad you brought that up, because manufacturing truly is, if you go to their website, just even if it's not for reshoring, they have tons of webinars and training that's available for any areas of manufacturing, even training people and HR. They have tons of different resources, and we work with their office closely. From our perspective, there's just a few people listed here. I mean, we work with Cedar Rapids. I mean, we work with tons of economic development agencies that have resources. And, this list is kind of like, including me, a lot of knowledge, but, we always know a guy, right? If I don't know the answer, I know a guy, or I know somebody that will be able to help. And also, depending on what you're doing, I think obviously they need to get paid, but like freight forwarders, we have several freight forwarders throughout the state that we work with, that we've hooked companies up with when they're struggling with logistics issues. I think a lot of people don't, we have some local companies that are really great, that are helpful, and they do this every day, and they can help navigate some of this for you. Obviously, they're doing this for profit, but we've had some that have just been amazing, and companies form, lifelong relationships and help them with their international business and navigating some of this. And also the Small Business Administration, they have regional offices, I want to say 19, but I'm not sure, throughout the state. But they have a lot of different resources that they can help you with. And if they don't, if this is something, they're all kind of different and specialized, but they have a lot of different resources as well that can help. But
well, we've been jabbering a little bit. Any questions from the audience? Yeah.
Jeremy, you mentioned that you brought 3 people
Sure. The question for everybody was: we had 3 Brazilians come to the U.S. How difficult was that process? It actually started off pretty difficult because there was a travel ban when we first started the conversation. It was February of 21, I think. 21, 22, yeah. And they couldn't come, but and we also had the problem that we wanted. Everybody in Brazil wanted to come to the U.S. That was like when I went down there and talked to everybody, that was their dream. They've only seen it on the internet. If we could go to the U.S., that would be fantastic. And I'm like, well, why not? Let's make it happen. We're a global company, right? We can do that. And so the team down there did a great job of, everybody had to go to the consulate, get their visas and work visas and ability to be able to come over. The travel ban lifted, and so we were able to start bringing people in. And I think we have a limit of maybe 120 days that they can actually be here before they have to return. But then we had the issues of when they got here logistically, how to handle that. So we set them up in a nice hotel, long stay hotel. And then we had to make sure that they could get to Target and Walmart and get food. And we gave them a Suburban to drive. And we were a little worried about the Suburban because, but if you've ever driven in Brazil, they don't have anything as big as a Suburban, but the traffic is crazy. So they are like, oh, there's nobody out here. I can just drive. And it's like, it's super simple. And then we had the winter, and their winters are like high of 60 degrees, and so that was a little bit of a shock. But they love the snow, and so many hadn't been on a plane, they hadn't seen snow, they hadn't done a lot of things, but they got to come and live and be like U.S. citizens for a good period of time, and then they all opted to come back, and so that was a pretty cool deal too. So it's been a really good thing that's happened. And then we had to take care of the pay. How to pay them in country and pay them up here, we had to work through. So there was a lot of complexity, but our team all bonded together and made it happen. So it really went well. We've learned a lot. We have our next batch up today. We had 2 people showed up on Monday, 2 people went back last week, and then we have one guy that's been here for, he'll be kind of a crossover type thing. So they love it. It's been a really cool experience. Any other questions?
Are there best practices you've learned from offshore facilities or cultures that you've implemented here in the U.S.?
Yeah, so we have a facility in Germany, and I would say the one thing that we often take away, it can be frustrating at times, but I think it's also a good learning, is just the German culture is very much about planning, and so we tend to kind of embrace momentum over perfection. They tend to embrace perfection over momentum. And so I think we've learned to be a little bit more patient in the planning phase. And I think that's, in a lot of cases, has helped us to kind of go slow to go faster eventually. And so I think that's one of the things that we've learned from our German coworkers. Any Brazilian?
Oh, best practices. I think just recognizing the culture of the different places. That's been a learning for us. There's so many different labor laws and things of that nature that you have to kind of get used to and understand. And when you don't speak the language, that barrier there is there as well. So you really have to figure out who you can trust and align yourself with some really good partners. When we started up our Brazil facility, it just by happenstance, a guy that I had hired at another place that I worked with to be a CFO of a Brazilian company that we had just purchased, I reached out to him to network, and he actually happened to live 30 minutes from our facility. And so Roberto, I was like, what are you doing? And he's like, well, I'm consulting. I'm like, you want to come work for me again? And he's like, yeah. And so he's been with us for the last couple of years and helping. And it's just really good to have somebody you can trust, that's not going to steer you the wrong way. Yeah. Yeah, it's a great question. We engaged a lot of professional help to set up the company the right way. The capital contribution you had to put into the country to start the company itself. What we ended up doing is we went with one of our customer partners. So John Deere is who we started with down there. Now we're expanding into other customer bases. But with them, we started doing contract manufacturing. And so we had a small team of 2 to 3 people down in Brazil that worked with another company that made our product for us. And at a point, it made more sense. We just grew to a volume that we couldn't trust them necessarily to have good on-time delivery, and the costs they kept on kind of bumping up to enough that was like, okay, we probably need to be in this thing and manufacture it ourselves. And so that kicked off a search for a facility. We went ahead and bought or leased a facility that was brand new so that we could outfit it the way we wanted to, and laid everything out and got everything installed. And a little bit of, you go back to COVID and much of a disruption. We were in there February of 2020 looking for alternatives and facilities when March 2020 hit, and everything kind of was put on pause. And so as we came back the following year, we were able to get everything implemented. The one pain was that we had to do COVID tests every time we went down and came back. That wasn't very fun. But we got through it, and having a partner like John Deere down there with us helped. And then I guess the other thing to tack onto that is we also decided last year to become ISO certified, which really helped us internally to take some of the tribal knowledge that we had and start to put it into more of a process form so that we could be a little bit more organized around things and help them scale eventually. Brent, what about, or I would say about Germany?
Yeah, similar story. We got leaned on our same customer, John Deere. We also, Andrea had mentioned freight forwarders. One of our long-term key partners is actually based in Germany. From a freight forwarding standpoint, they were very helpful. There's, similar to the Economic Alliance, there's something similar in Germany that we were able to leverage on. So, customers, suppliers, long-term partners in our business were all part of our success in setting up in Germany.
I would just add one thing. I don't think it matters what level of international business you're doing. If you're setting up an operations or you're just selling, maybe you want to sell into a country, having local partners is essential. It's key. I mean, if you think this is my opinion, any country that you're going to do business in or sell into or set up operations, you have to have local support. You have to have good vetted partners. As I mentioned earlier, in my previous life, I've been to over 60 countries and done business all over the world. And we always had local partners. I mean, at some level, a distributor or a sales rep or a contractor or someone or operations. And, you have to develop trusted relationships. They have to be people you can trust that are vetted and that you have long-term relationships with. I think everybody would say that's just absolutely key in whatever you're doing internationally, would be my comment.
Other questions?
You had mentioned, Andrea, like some automation at the meat locker and that kind of thing. Can any of you share additional examples of where you've seen either more automation to make up for lack of workers, and or if maybe you're looking at any AI?
Yeah. So I would say we're very early on the AI train, or whatever we're calling it. We've looked at we've tested out cobots. We have not found a good application for cobots. Kind of our niche that we're finding in our kind of volume lane is really more and more on PLCs, which is a industrial computer that's been out for a long time, but we're seeing prices in that area drop quite a bit. The technology to integrate things, we use a lot of like torque tools and leak testers and things like that, and so our progress, I would say, in the automation space has been real incremental. We've taken, kind of not the exciting technologies you hear in the news, but more things that have been out there than tried and true, and been able to leverage those over the last, I don't know, I would say our journey there has been over the last 5 and 10 years has been what we've seen.
Yeah, ours is very similar. We're looking at more process improvement, I think, more so as we try to get more throughput through the plant. We did invest in a robotic welder, and I think the thing that's been concerning for us is the cost to put the fixtures in place for that thing to work properly, and we don't have like high amounts of widgets that just run through the plant, so there's a lot of variety in how we kind of deal with that the best way. And so we've started to kind of dabble with it and try to figure that out. We have this dealer portal where you can go to frequently asked questions and kind of try to drill down on maybe troubleshooting type of things. And we tried to do the chat GBT type of thing, and it basically said we didn't have enough data to do some stuff with. So we're trying to figure that out too. I mean, but we're going slowly. And like I said, it's more about processes and quality to make sure that we could just get better throughput right now.
One thing I would just point out too, there are tons of grants for people, and I come from sales, so I always feel like I'm selling, even though I'm a state government employee now. But even our economic development agency, we have a program called Manufacturing 4.0, and there's grants available to small manufacturers that are looking to upgrade equipment. Of course, you have to have skin in the game. It's usually a match or a percentage. But the state has grants. I know the locker that I mentioned, I think he got a grant through USDA or a federal grant to help subsidize some of that cost. And again, economic developers, they want you to improve processes, to create jobs, to generate revenue. So definitely, if you're looking at some of those, there are tons of programs that will help you. And yes, there's paperwork. Yes, there's a little pain involved sometimes that people don't like. But definitely reach out, depending on your industry, and find out what some of those grant programs are, because there's some money out there to help you.
Maybe one more question. I'll turn it back over to Jamie. Are you wrapping things up?
Yeah. I will just echo what Andrew said. If you're going to be looking at anything international, there are just amazing resources for missions, for trade missions, anything just to kind of get your feet wet in that. Lawyers, big one for doing international business, and they've been hugely helpful for any of our business attraction projects in that direction. So make sure you take advantage of that. And then if you want resources and names for Cirrus, I know a guy or I know a girl. Joy McDonald is in our areas, in our corridor. She's our contact for the corridor. She's phenomenal. Michael Donald too, which I'm sure is a name that most people here know. But thank you everybody for coming out today. If you have further questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us. And remember that the State of the City for Hiawatha is September 14th, 4 o'clock. Again,